This is the Hyundai Tucson, one of the best looking SUVs on the road. But does the performance match the looks? Let's find out. This fourth generation of the Tucson was released in 2020 and it's available in a short and long wheelbase. But here in Australia, and in fact pretty much everywhere around the world outside of Europe and Central America, we just get the long wheelbase version. It's truly a global car. And with Hyundai selling so many of these, I think it's commendable that they've taken a risk and actually given it some really interesting looks. And that's especially true here at the front of the Tucson, with one of the most interesting looking front ends of any car on the road. These giant LED driving lights are probably the biggest you'd find on any car anywhere, and they look fantastic. They're always on, so everyone knows you're coming. The main headlight cluster is actually down the bottom here, and these are halogens as opposed to the LED driving lights. So you do have this sort of mishmash of yellow and white lighting, which doesn't look so good, but I really like this front grille design and the huge Hyundai logo. It's a really striking, aggressive design. The Tucson is right on trend with these straight lines creasing the sheet metal here. It's a bit similar to its smaller sedan brother, the i30, and also shares a bit of a look with the Toyota RAV4. The wheels are two-tone 18-inch alloys. The back of the Tucson looks just as good as the front, and in fact I think these rear light clusters look like a mix of a Mustang and a Range Rover. Underneath the tailgate here, which is manual, we have a 539 litre cargo space. Knock down the rear seats, you can expand that by a further 1300 litres. Cargo blind there, a nice flat floor making for easy loading, and underneath that a full-size spare tyre. There's a few different engines available in the Tucson. This mid-spec Eclipse model has been optioned with a 4-cylinder 2-litre diesel turbocharged engine that outputs 137 kilowatts of power and 416 newton meters of torque, which makes this car very quick in a straight line. Fuel economy is a very frugal 6.3 litres per 100 kilometres. Now the diesel engine means you pay more when you drive away, but less when you fill up, which you'll be doing less often anyway. There's an 8-speed automatic gearbox and it's all-wheel drive. The interior of the Tucson looks great too, but I think Audi and Hyundai might be spying on each other because this grille design here across the width of the dash looks a little bit similar to what Audi do. And this steering wheel looks very similar to the one that's about to be seen in the new Audi A8. The first thing you notice is the center console with its big 10.25-inch center console screen that sits flush with the bezel that it sits in, surrounded by some touch-sensitive buttons. It's a really good look. The screen has nice sharp graphics. It runs the regular Hyundai Kia software, which if you've driven a Hyundai or Kia in the last couple of years, you'll be immediately at home with. They all work kind of the same. There's also wide Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. What I really like about Hyundai and Kia's center console screens is that the software that runs them is pretty much the same across the board. If you've used one, you've used them all pretty much. I mean, yeah, they turn various functions on and off and change the graphics up a little bit depending on the spec of the car, but they all work in pretty much the same way. And that's even true of the shortcut buttons underneath the screen here. And what I like in the Tucson is that there are actually no physical buttons. It's merely a touch-sensitive piece of plastic and it looks really good. Same for the climate controls, it's all touch sensitive with a little LED display screen. We've got 2 USB outlets underneath that, a 12-volt outlet, a nice little storage space for your wallet, and then there's the cordless phone charging, which actually sits at an angle pointing away from the driver. And I couldn't find it at first. I thought, my God, this car doesn't have any wireless charging, but it does. It just took me a minute to find it. And then I thought, well, that's a really silly design because as soon as I brake, the phone is going to go flying forward off the pad, but it's actually magnetized. And it's a good design because your phone doesn't catch your eye while you're driving. You can't actually see it. So that's a good little safety feature there. Some buttons here to control the seat heating and the parking controls. There's no gear shifter in this car. It's all push button automatic transmission. We've got the drive and terrain mode selector. The park brake, 2 smallish cup holders, but we do get a nice big deep center console bin. The instrument cluster in this mid-spec Eclipse model is analog with a small digital screen in the middle. It's pretty much the same as you've seen in any other Hyundai car. The top-spec Highlander models do get all digital, but here it's analog, and that's okay, it works pretty well. I must admit though, having an analog speedo in a car seems entirely redundant now because my eyes only ever look at the digital one in the middle, which is actually more accurate. This steering wheel is new to me. It's the first time I've seen one of these. I didn't really like it at first, but it has actually grown on me a bit. And as I mentioned before, we're going to see a steering wheel that looks a lot like this in the Audi A8 soon. It has a good feel to it. It's sort of nice and solid and thick. Sound system controls on the left. We've got adaptive cruise control systems on the right and paddle shifters that are made out of metal here on either side of the wheel. The seats are leather. They are pretty comfortable. They are heated, and there is also electric adjustment for the driver, but no memory position. The front passenger has manual adjustment only. Seating position, really good. Right to the front of the bonnet there. Plenty of headroom, good visibility through the rear vision mirror. The sills aren't too high, so there's pretty good blind spot vision, but there is, of course, blind spot detection in the rear vision mirrors. In terms of the materials used throughout the rest of the cabin, we've got a bit of hard plastic up here on top. Gets a little bit softer there in the middle, and there's some fabric accents here on the door and on the dashboard. And then it gets a little bit hard plasticky underneath that with some piano black here in the middle. Getting into the back of the Tucson, lots of room. This is really comfortable actually. Oh boy, I'm 190 centimeters tall and I'm behind my own seating position, nowhere near the seat in front of me. And these seats are actually adjustable in terms of how far you want them reclined, and they're a fair way back at the moment. Maybe a little bit too far back for me. There we go, it's a bit more comfortable. But this is really good. There's a couple of air vents there. There's 2 USB outlets down the bottom there, which will keep the kids entertained in the back. We've got an armrest with cup holders, nice leather seats. Yeah, this is road trip worthy, all right. The experience of driving the Tucson around town, especially with its diesel engine, doesn't quite match the exterior looks, because if I'm honest, it sounds a bit like a tractor. And yet the outside looks like it should be powered by a battery or hydrogen or some cutting-edge technology. With its turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel engine, the Tucson is actually really quick in a straight line, like surprisingly so for a car this size. It goes really well. And all that torque is really low in the rev range, so it comes on pretty quickly. But the one downside of this car's performance is its suspension, which is really aimed at being off the road rather than on it, because you do just get a little bit of that sensation of sitting on top of a flagpole. It's just a bit wobbly. But the trade-off is better off-road performance, because you're sitting up quite high, there's a lot of ground clearance, and the all-wheel drive system can get you out of most jams off-road and make sure you've got great traction and stability on-road, especially in the wet. There are 4 drive modes: Eco, Normal, Sport and Smart, and 3 terrain modes: Snow, Mud and Sand. There's all-wheel drive capability, but there's no lockable diff, so you can't really do full-on hardcore up the side of a mountain 4-wheel driving in this car. This is more sort of about mid-range off-roading. The Tucson, like all Hyundais, comes with a 5-year warranty, and you can prepay your servicing and save a bit more cash up to 5 years. Something that's got me thinking lately that I guess makes sense from a marketing point of view is that Hyundai and Kia are owned by the same company. Their cars share a lot of the same underpinnings, a lot of the same parts. But yet, Kia's warranty is a full 2 years longer than Hyundai's. It's 7 years. Is there really a difference though, aside from the design and the aesthetics, between a Hyundai and a Kia though, to justify that difference? The Tucson is one of the most eye-catching SUVs on the road. It looks really good, especially in an urban environment, but the driving experience suggests maybe that it was built with semi-rural life in mind. And I say semi-rural because it's not a hardcore 4-wheel drive. It doesn't have a huge brake towing capacity, and the suspension is really more geared towards off-road rather than on, but it looks really good. So maybe Hyundai should have called it the Pitt Street Farmer, but that's not really as catchy.